Welcome everyone to another edition of Playthrough, and on this edition it's BS Super Mario USA, brought to us by Nintendo. If you're unfamiliar with the Satellaview, it was a special satellite service for the Super Famicom only in Japan. It would broadcast games over a period of time that you could download and be a part of a live broadcast. The broadcast usually would feature live voice acting as well as live music. There were many Satellaview games that were broadcast during the lifespan of the device, and a few of those featured the Super Mario characters. This one, Super Mario USA, is a modified version of Super Mario Bros. 2. The game is presented storyline-wise as a sequel, even though the game remains mostly intact to the original Super Mario 2. The game was broadcast over a 4-week span. Every week, for 1 hour, you were able to complete that week's world while listening to the dialogue and music that would go along with the story. Because of the nature of the satellite and Satellaview itself, you had to be playing during that allotted time period in order to be able to actually play the game. But thankfully, the ROMs were maintained and have been patched so that we can now play them years later. But due to the nature of the live satellite-like feed for the audio and the voice acting, that is not included in this version of the game, and broadcast footage of those original playthroughs is very hard to get a hold of. So here we go with BS Super Mario Bros. USA. When you start the game, you'll be presented with the St. Giga Nintendo logos. St. Giga was the provider of the Satellaview and the satellite service. You'll then be given the option for 2 different control schemes, and then you would press start and wait for the broadcast to begin. Thankfully, due to the patching of the ROM itself, we're able to actually go right into the game without having that wait period. You're then presented the opening storyline through a series of pictures, and I assume would have been voice acting over the pictures, telling you the storyline of the upcoming episode. Now, all the pictures remain the same for all 4 weeks except for the final picture, which is kind of like the title card for that week's particular episode. The broadcast for week 1 was entitled We the Super Birdos and takes place in Super Mario Bros. 2 World 1. I'm doing a tiny bit of fast forwarding through those pictures themselves, and for every other week I'm just going to show the title card before we jump into the actual game itself, since the remaining pictures will always be the same and it'll be the same music playing over it. So after the opening, you'll be presented with the World 1-1 screen. You'll see how many lives you have and be able to press start. If you press select, you'll go to the status menu, where you'll be able to look at a series of stats that the game actually keeps, including how many of certain items that you end up finding, including the special gold Mario statues. In each of the weeks, there are 10 gold Mario statues for you to find, though unfortunately there is no bonus for collecting them, so we'll see a few of them as we're going through and grab a couple, but I won't be collecting them all. The gameplay for Super Mario Bros. USA is the same as you would expect from the Super Mario Bros. 2 from Mario All-Stars. The control for the characters and everything else remains the same, but you of course also, I'm sure, notice that you start off as Mario with no character selection screen to be had. The game will randomly give you a different character depending upon the time, as it would coincide with the narrative that was going on. You'll notice in the upper right corner the clock. All of the Satellaview games had a clock, and it was based, of course, on real time, with certain events being triggered at certain time intervals. Every Satellaview game always started 5 minutes after the hour and would end at 50 minutes of the hour. That way, everyone had enough time at the beginning to download the broadcast and then for some cleanup at the end. You'll also notice that various profiles of the characters will appear on the screen, and you'll be seeing their mouths move as dialogue is going by with all the characters. It would have been great to have been able to actually hear the live voice acting that would have been going on during the broadcast so that you could have followed the story along with actually playing through the game. It definitely had to be a really cool experience for any mid-90s gamer. While you're only playing through one world in each week, you can also fight the main boss of the game, Wart, at any time you would like by actually using one of the potions, going through the door, and then going down one of the various pipes, similar to how you would take the warp zones in normal Super Mario Bros. 2, except in this, instead of a warp being activated, you'll be transported right to Wart. The time intervals, besides just the narrative that was being told throughout the game, there was also other random events, such as switching whatever character you're currently playing as. So while we'd be playing as Mario for most of it, the longer you go, the more it'll end up switching off who you end up controlling. It happens really quickly too, so I'm sure you would have to make sure you're really paying attention, because a quick change of the character that you're playing as, and it could be a big adjustment in some key moments of the game. You'll also notice stuff like flashes of light that will take out all enemies currently on screen. You would also have various other power-ups, as well as some negative effects as well that would happen at certain time intervals, including a giant version of Phanto that would then chase you around the screen, which we'll be seeing in one of the later weeks here. When it comes to the music that was actually broadcast over the satellite feed, it actually wasn't music from Super Mario Bros. 2. It was actually songs from the Super Mario World soundtrack, songs from the Japanese-only release Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, 3 Hop, Step, Jump album, as well as a few actual original compositions and jingles that would play throughout the course of the gameplay. Because it was being broadcast via a satellite service, it was of course much better quality. Like, you could actually have orchestral style music that could be actually broadcast, and when you were playing the radio drama that was the live voice acting that was going on, it was full clarity of sound that was coming through this Super Famicom. After, of course, going through the locked door and avoiding Phanto in the previous room, we now get ready to enter the boss chamber of one of my favorite villains of all of Super Mario, Bowser. Starting off by using, of course, the bomb to kind of sneak our way through, and then start preparing to launch up the bombs at him, and, of course, try to do our best to avoid running into any of the explosions. I always try to catch a bomb or two mid-air from Bowser if I'm able to, and after 3 bomb explosions, he is taken out. You'll also are awarded a gold Mario statue for defeating the boss. For collecting all the statues and other various items, you actually get a score, so the goal really is kind of to get how high of a score you can seemingly do within the allotted amount of time, and if you're able to find all 10 of those hidden Mario statues. Now, before we move on to week number 2, we're gonna go back into this level here, use one of the potions, and then travel to Wart's dungeon and actually defeat Wart real quick. The game doesn't play the ending, though, once you defeat Wart. You're actually going to go through the door, and then it'll just go back to the level selection screen. But if you look at the status screen, you'll have like an X over Wart that signifies that you were able to defeat him during that week's episode. The battle against Wart, though, remains the same as it always has, being able to grab the various vegetables that shoot out of the pipe-like organ in the middle here, and then just keep launching them down his throat until eventually he ends up croaking. I still wait for the day that Nintendo decides to actually bring Wart back in some capacity, maybe making him the villain of another Mario game, or at least a Mario spin-off of some sort. Just about every type of Mario enemy and villain from Super Mario Bros. 2 has made an appearance in some later game in the series. As you can see here, though, because of the time reaching a certain bit, it actually ended up switching us over to Princess Peach before we end up going through the door and back to the level selection screen. You can go back then to any of the 3 levels that we ended up completing, but now we're going to move on to week number 2. Episode number 2 is known as Clyde Surprises Secrets of the Quicksand and takes place in, not surprisingly, World 2 of Super Mario Bros. 2. As you can see at the beginning, we have our level selection screen just like before taking full control of Mario once again, jumping into the level. Trying to do my best while jumping through to avoid the quicksand, and if I end up getting sucked into it, have to mash that jump button quick in order to free myself and get away. The spewing fire plants are always a nuisance to try to run under quickly and avoid getting hit by the fireballs before entering the pyramid at the end of the area, and now have to start the long process of digging my way slowly through all of the heaps of sand to work my way to the very bottom and go into the Birdo chamber. Along the way, thankfully, even though I got hit during that opening area, one of the Mario statues is located here, so I'm able to grab it quickly and replenish my health. You can still find some other power-ups, including with the time they may actually end up giving you extra things like the mushrooms so that you may have extra health in a given level, but I never ran into that during the course of my time with Super Mario Bros. USA. After taking out Birdo, I love the dialogue that's seemingly going on in the corner with Clyde, Mauser, and Birdo battling back and forth, I'm sure, with words. We complete the stage and move on to level 2 of World 2. Very quickly at the beginning, one of the gold statues falls from the sky and lands in the quicksand, so if you're going to want to grab that, you have to do so quickly. Here we end up getting a power-up of the star power, and are able just to run through a series of enemies for a little bit here. Quickly, all I have to do is a charged-up jump to get over the cactus, then run underneath the 2 fire-spewing plants before dropping down the vine and start my long dig of level number 2. With the digging, if you're quick enough before one of the Shy Guys ends up falling and the screen ends up scrolling past them, they won't end up falling on you. But you'll have to be very quick with those digging spots in order to be able to do that. Most of the time, you're just going to have to keep moving back and forth left and right, keep digging holes and trying to avoid the Shy Guys altogether. Running to the left and a little bit of the opening, and then have to now move back to the right side though, where the Sniffit is, my favorite enemy from Super Mario Bros. 2, and avoid his little gunfire as he's trying to make his way upwards. I stop his path just so that he is now forever stuck, slowly jumping in that one spot, trying to spew at an enemy that will never come back. Actually kind of sad to leave him there like that because he doesn't have the ability to actually dig, so I guess he'll be there forever. Either way, we move into the next chamber, grab one of the big blocks and use it to hit Birdo. This is of course the red Birdo that sometimes shoots fireballs, sometimes shoots eggs, and of course if you jump on a fireball, you're just going to end up burning Mario and end up losing some health or your life altogether. Now it's time for level number 3 of World 2 here. The Bezo immediately tries to run into me from the top. You can jump up there by jumping on the backs of a Bezo, but because of the effect going on right now, all enemies are being wiped out randomly by the flashes of light that are going on in the stage. Overall, a relatively quick area. I'm going to take the right path here and drop it down. Be careful not to land with all the Shy Guys. Before I'm able to even pick up the POW block and launch it at the Shy Guys to destroy that little group of them, the flash of light ends up doing that for me. And now I can start my way downwards towards the key room and then get chased by that Phanto before going back up to that locked door up top. Nothing has changed here as far as design. Either one of the paths you end up taking, whether it's on the left or right side, you'll be able to work your way down through the sand and eventually make your way to that key room. Here I'm going to use a super jump onto the key, grab it, and then quickly get out of here before Phanto is able to kind of even free himself, and then jump my way all the way back up to that locked door. In the next room, I grab the cherry that ends up being the one I needed in order to spawn the star, and then I can run through a couple of the enemies here, but of course the star doesn't really last all that long. Grab the crystal, and then work my way into try Clyde's chamber. Start off immediately by picking up one of the blocks and jump onto the top platform and launch it across the room at him. Try to quickly get back before any of the fireballs kind of catch up with me. Thankfully, because of the flash of light, it actually gave me a heart in case I had ended up getting hit. But I launched the third block at Try Clyde and defeat him, and then grab the little gold statue, and we've completed week number 2. Week number 3's broadcast was known as Fry Guy at the Sea of Ice. As you can probably guess from that name and the title card itself, it takes place in world number 4 of Mario 2. I guess world number 3 was a little bit boring for them to do in this series of broadcasts. World 4, the ice-themed or snow-themed stage, is one of my absolute favorites. The ice blocks and the types of enemies that you ended up battling along the way just ended up being one of my favorites when I was younger. Also, due to the fact this is where you warp from, if you use the warp in the first world of Mario 2, I ended up completing world number 4 quite a lot when I was younger. At the end of the first area, you'll of course take the rocket ship up into the air, and this is where you're introduced to the Shy Guys riding on the vehicles and watching out for the fireballs that they end up spewing out during the course here. There's a little statue here. If you need to replenish your health, wait for the machine to kind of drop down. You can kind of run along the screen with the fireball and grab the crystal at the end in order to complete level 1 of World 4. 4-2 is one of the tougher stages of the early part of Super Mario Bros. 2, and of course it's because of the swarm of Bezos that immediately attack you as you enter in. Little short jumps and a lot of ducking, more so than trying to jump over all the Bezos, was always my strategy for being able to try to avoid them and be able to make it through the area unhurt. At the end of the area, of course, you'll go through the door with all of the whales located at the bottom. And you can, of course, jump on the water spouts on their back in order to help you traverse. But, of course, running into the water spout itself, just not the top portion of it, will end up causing damage to you. So you always have to be cautious of that. Over here, normally that pipe would take you to the warp that would actually take you to the final world of the game. Or if you wanted to activate it now, you would actually be taken to the battle against Wart. Take the rocket ship at the end to get to the next part here with the rideable vehicles. Take off the Shy Guy here and then stand on the vehicle and duck down in order to ride this along. Introduced also in here is another one of my favorite enemies, the Porcupos. Those little porcupine guys really aren't all that amazing, but just their sprite was always pretty adorable back in the day. After that, though, we battle another one of the red Birdos. Watch out for the fireballs. Do the normal 3 eggs in order to defeat it, and move on to the third stage of World 4. Now for this stage, it was always pretty tricky, but after a little bit of thinking, you'll figure out, of course, that you have to actually ride the Birdo egg all the way across the stage to the right side in order to actually be able to continue along the level. After doing so, make a little bit of jumps until you make it to the door. Here we're now going to have to work our way up. There's a whole bunch of the flurry little enemies kind of coming down from above with their kind of ice skating like moves on the ice. Be very cautious, of course, because missing a jump here may end up causing us to fall down into those spikes below. Of course, after making it to the top, head through the door, run over to the right, and enter the door just to the right of it to enter the second tower here of this castle. Jump on top of the red Shy Guy, who will then drop to the spikes, and then will slowly walk its way over to the right and on to the spikes. Thankfully, the Shy Guys don't get hurt or die this way, so we can use them to help us get through. Either stay on the Shy Guy or drop down. Either way, enter the next door that you end up landing at in order to find the key for World 4. Be careful of the flurries here, as they can kind of bunch up and be a little bit of a pain when trying to get through the room, but usually isn't too bad. Of course, Phanto will now be chasing you as you're trying to go back and forth left and right on the various ice-like platforms, while also jumping over a few enemies as you're making your way down. I end up getting the star ability during the course of this, and they're actually able to jump up and hit Phanto. You can't actually kill Phanto, but you can hit him and knock him away. In the original Super Mario Bros. 2, I think there was actually a way to defeat Phanto with the star, but it was a little bit difficult to do so. The battle against Fry Guy, though, is one of the toughest in the game. Not only does Fry Guy move quickly along the top portion, dropping flames everywhere, it's always that final hit that does it. Delivering the third hit to him, he'll spread apart into 4 little flames that jump around pretty quickly. They get faster the less of them that are on screen, and you have to quickly snuff out the flames in order to defeat them and complete World 4, and thus completing week number 3. The fourth and final week of BS Super Mario Bros. USA was known as Wart's Trap Watch Out Super Mario Bros. And takes place in World 5. Even though you would think from the title card itself that it would be about Wart's Castle, the final world of the game, is nowhere to be seen, but you can still fight Wart like you could in all the past weeks, and we will be doing so in order to kind of just finalize the course of the run. The first level of World 5 is also one of the toughest platforming style stages in Mario 2. You have to be very careful while jumping on the logs, as well as of course jumping on the fish themselves. In the original Doki Doki Panic, which Super Mario Bros. USA or Super Mario 2 was based off of, the waterfalls ran a lot quicker with their sprites, so back on the NES, it was almost blinding and really difficult to kind of get through that area. Introduced here also, though, is the green Birdos. These nasty Birdos only shoot out flames, and you'll have to use the blocks in their rooms in order to throw at it multiple times in order to defeat the Birdo and then move on to the next stage. The second level of World 5 is a night-themed stage and has the Ostros with the Shy Guys riding on their back, another one of the cool enemies just overall in the game. There's Porcupos, so I'm always happy to do any of the levels that involve those guys. Some careful platforming over the spewing fire plants, and because of the clock here, you'll notice the giant Phanto ends up running in and ends up actually doing damage to me. Thankfully, it doesn't end up chasing me to multiple streams or anything, but it's still pretty scary just to run into that thing. Thankfully, that was not included in the original release of Super Mario Bros. 2. Move your way back and forth up the vines, watching out for the enemies as you do so, and reach the door at the very top where you'll pull the POW block and fall through. Be careful, of course, while falling here, stay mostly in the center for a little bit, and then work your way to the left or right so that you can fall through the small opening to avoid all of the spikes that are all around. Then when you get farther down, be sure to be careful not to fall down into the waterfall below, and then enter the next room where you will make it to the Birdo fight, which thankfully is a red Birdo, so at least you sometimes can get the eggs out of it so that you can defeat it that way. After 3 hits on Birdo, we get to move on to the third and final level of World number 5. I'm sure you also noticed that there isn't any of the slot machines at the end of any of the levels. I do think there's a way that it may pop up as a random event sometimes because of the way the BS Satellite game ends up working, but I never have had it actually happen to me. Either way, you're not collecting coins in the opposite world by going through the potion doors. Be careful of the bombs through the course of this level. Drop down the far end here and then head down the ladder. Once down here, just ignore the little opening to the right and just run along the top. Jump over a few bombs, watch out for the fire plant, which unfortunately ends up doing damage to me, and go through the next door. Here you have to be very careful while working your way down. You can use the blocks to actually stuff up the openings so that Shy Guys will not keep spawning out of them as you're making your way down. After getting all the way to the bottom, though, you'll head to the left side. Thankfully, I'm going to grab this little Mario statue here to replenish my health, and then start working my way up. If you're wondering what the 2 characters in the upper left corner are, the king as well as his advisor are the King of Subcon, which the world of Mario 2 takes place in the world of Subcon. And that is, of course, the king and then his advisor. I'm not sure the exact storyline, of course, that's going on with those characters, but I figured I'd let you know who they actually are. After reaching the 10-minute mark of the hour, I end up switching over to Luigi, who I will remain here during the end of this stage. Here we'll have to get on the magic carpet by the Pidgeot and work our way over the large gap as quickly as we can before the magic carpet ends up disappearing. Because of a weird glitch here, I'm able to actually throw the item with the Pidgeot and end up making the carpet I'm on speed forward. Kind of weird, it doesn't happen usually, but somehow I was able to have that happen during this run. I then have to fight the red Birdo on the right side here, grabbing the eggs and of course launching at it, and then open up the chamber for Claw Grip. Claw Grip has the distinction of being the only original boss created for Super Mario Bros. 2. Of course, in the original Doki Doki Panic, you would end up fighting against a third white Mauser instead of fighting against Claw Grip. So, a pretty cool overall addition, because his boss battle is different than a lot of the other bosses in the game. He throws his rocks at you, and you have to wait for them to bounce off of the nearby walls in order to jump on top of them, pick them up, and then launch them at it. He also takes more hits than your average boss, actually dealing 5 damage to him in order to defeat him instead of just 3 like many of the other main bosses of the game. After Claw Grip is defeated, just like always, we get one of the gold statues that drops down and we can head through the door. Now I'm going to go right back into World 5-3 because this is the quickest way to get into the pipe and go back to Wart's Chamber, and we're going to do that in order to kind of finish up the run of the game here. Unfortunately, because of the way things were done in the broadcast in general, there isn't any like ending or kind of final scenes or anything that were put into the game overall. I'm sure just the story in general was just finished up after the dialogue ended up getting done with. Just like any week that you would end up coming here to fight Wart, his battle is just the same as we did a little bit earlier here in the video, and once he is defeated, we can then of course just mess around until the time ends up running out and see if we're able to find those gold statues. After throwing that last bit of food into Wart's mouth, I just jump into him just for the sake of it, which does damage, of course, to Luigi, even though Wart's already been defeated. Head through the door here, and then I'm going to pull up the status screen just so you guys can see it real quick. You can see each of the levels and how many of the gold statues I found in each, along with an X over the enemies that were the bosses of those particular stages. But with that, guys, that'll wrap up this edition of Play It Through. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up or commenting down below. If you enjoyed this run-through of Super Mario Bros. 2, the Satellaview version of the game, be sure to check out a special Mario 2 hack I did back at the holidays, the Christmas edition of Super Mario Bros. 2. I also need to thank, of course, all the members of my Patreon. You guys truly are keeping this channel alive. Your monthly pledges go to helping me be able to continue doing videos and buy all sorts of things that will help out by equipment or other games for reviews and such. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for all the support, for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.